What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question this week comes from Davey Kasem, who asks what I think of the theory that Rey and Ezra are related, or that Rey is even Ezra's daughter. I really doubt it. I think that the films are always going to be Lucasfilm's bread and butter, so I don't expect that we're going to see characters from the comics or even Rebels in what I assume will be a very major role. Now, I don't think it's out of the question completely, but in my opinion, I think it's more likely that the biggest connections we're going to get between those two are things like we saw in Rogue One, little cameos here and there. So I really just doubt it. Building off of that, Mark Ashley wants to know if I think Rey is a Skywalker. I don't really think so. He wants to know if Kylo Ren will turn back to the light side. I'm uncertain about this, but again, I think he probably will not. And he asks if that is the case, if Rey is not a Skywalker and Kylo Ren stays with the dark side, what does that mean? And if the saga films are always supposed to be about the Skywalker family, how is it that we don't have a Skywalker protagonist? Well, I would argue that even though Luke wasn't in The Force Awakens very much, it could still be very much about him and his journey. The sequel trilogy could be about how Luke brings the Jedi back for good, finally. We don't really know, but just because he isn't one of the main 3 or 4 of the cast, I think that he is still going to be very central to the plot, and he could still be considered the Skywalker element of these sequel trilogy of films. Michael Sweat has a question here, and oh my gosh. Well, he basically asks if I could remake any film within the Star Wars universe, what would I choose? Very selfishly, I would go with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just some sort of, not maybe that exact plot, but some sort of planet-hopping, galaxy-spanning adventure where someone is trying to chase down an artifact or a weapon or something, some sort of big MacGuffin. That's been done in Star Wars stories before, but I just love Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I'd love to see Indiana Jones in space. And we now have Dr. Aphra, who could kind of fill that role, but for now, the comics are enough for me. Shane Sutton wants to know why the Jedi couldn't sense that Palpatine was a Sith Lord. In the novel Tarkin, we learned that the Jedi Temple was built on top of a Sith shrine, and they did that so that they could try to stamp out the presence of the dark side. This was like from a war long ago. So they built the Jedi Temple and they were like trying to remove any essence of the dark side. Well, it didn't really work. The Sith Shrine was still down there. It was still active. Palpatine even visited it from time to time. And the shrine basically clouded their vision in the Force. I think it probably even could have led to some of the Jedi Temple Guard falling and becoming Inquisitors because they were there all the time. So that's basically why they couldn't sense that Palpatine, their leader, was a Sith. George Taylor asks if the new content outside of the films could be a little bit limited since Episode 8 takes place right after Episode 7. There's no gap, there's nothing to explore in between that. I see your point, but I'm really not worried about it considering The Force Awakens takes place 30 years after Return of the Jedi. There is still plenty that we can explore in between that time period. And even if we don't follow like the major characters in between episodes 7 and 8, which we can't, there's still other characters that we can learn about and explore, a bunch of side characters, background characters. So that doesn't really worry me so much. I think that it'll be interesting to see if episode 9 has a gap after episode 8. I kind of hope it does because I don't want the entirety of the sequel trilogy to take place over the matter of a few days or weeks. I think it should take place over the course of years, but we're just going to have to see what happens. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just pop on over to Patreon where I left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you some extra Star Wars Explained goodies, including a monthly giveaway of a full year-long subscription to Smuggler's Bounty, and the combined donations really go a long way in helping support the channel. On to YouTube questions. Sturfell asks what I expect from Star Wars after Episode 9 and the sequel trilogy is fully released. I would be shocked if they don't do another trilogy. I think they're going to realize that the saga films are their main money makers. Those are going to be like the big events every 2 years. So they might do like a couple anthology movies in between the trilogies just to build up hype and get the next story ready, but I would be just blown away if they never did an episode 10, 11, 12. So that's what I'm expecting, that at some point they will be announcing, yeah, we're for sure doing another trilogy. Han and Boba 310 wants to know if I think Lobot will ever appear in an anthology film. I don't know if you mean by himself, like in a starring role. That I'm pretty doubtful on, but even though I would totally watch it, I loved him in the Lando comic, and I'm going to come back to that. But I think that he will very likely appear in the Han Solo movie. I think that would be a missed opportunity if he weren't there. It would be kind of cool and interesting to see him before he got the implants, or at the very least, he would have the implants but would still have control over his mind and body, like we saw in the Lando comic. That comic is my favorite one of the new canon so far, and the big reason for that is because of Lobot and his story and his character. He had an amazing arc. If you haven't read it, please do. It's only 5 issues and it's great. So I would absolutely love to see Lobot reappear in a film and just kind of get to know him a little bit before he became Lobot as we know him. Jez asks why Ponda Baba's arm bleeds in the Cantina when it's cut off. Well, there is an in-universe explanation, and it's really just that Aqualish blood doesn't coagulate. So it didn't cauterize or anything. It was cut off, and the blood just kept on going. The real reason is because it was the first Star Wars movie. They hadn't really figured out exactly how a lightsaber works. They didn't figure out that it cauterizes things. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't change that in the special edition. That makes more sense to me than adding like a different crate dragon sound. Like, let's make something line up a little bit more with the rest of the universe. But I mean, really, I don't want them to make any more changes. Just leave it as is. But that is your reason, both in-universe and behind the scenes. Aaron Nicewonger wants to know why Palpatine keeps his disfigurement hidden through propaganda, even though it's already public knowledge, and he even calls attention to it in Revenge of the Sith. I think that the whole propaganda thing is more for the benefit of the Outer Rim. I think it's kind of unavoidable for people to see him on Coruscant and in the Senate when he has to make public appearances. So he is on holovids in the comics on Coruscant. The rest of the Corps probably knows that he's been beaten up, but most of the population of the galaxy lives outside of the core. They live in the Outer Rim, and out there, it's going to be harder for them to know what's true and what isn't. So he can kind of control the media a little bit more and control what people believe. So I think to the majority of the galaxy, he appears as this young and healthy-looking guy, despite the truth. Madison Badger asks if BB-8 is a completely unique droid or if there are other BB units in canon. Yeah, there are other BB units in canon. We just haven't seen them yet in any content. So BB-8 is unique in that sense. But when Poe refers to him, he's like, he's a white and orange BB unit. And then the Guavian Death Gang are like, the First Order's looking for a BB unit. When they're describing them, it's not like Poe says, oh, he's like this little soccer ball droid, and you'll know him when you see him. Like, he says it's a BB unit, and Finn knows what he's talking about. The Guavian Death Gang knows what a BB unit is. I think the BB unit is probably just a very new model, and it's being rolled out, but I think it is common knowledge what a BB unit is, and I'm sure we'll see more of them at some point in the future. That's all the time I have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's Q&A, just put it in the comments below or head over to Patreon and sign up. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to see new Star Wars videos every single day, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.